Welcome back. Parliament has resumed where there's lots of talk of a GST rebate, concerns over trade, of course, rumors of a snap election. Here to guide us through all of it is Laurie Turnbull with Dalhousie University's Faculty of Management in Ottawa. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the latest salvo in the relationship with the U.S. The Prime Minister said he told the American president he stands by his Davos speech. The White House is claiming he walked back his comments. Who's right, and does it even matter?
I don't think I believe that the Prime Minister is walking back anything. And, if anything, Prime Minister Carney has said, I meant what I said. And there certainly was no hesitation in his voice when he delivered that speech in Davos. I mean, I find it difficult to believe anything really that comes out of the White House these days. And even if you did, the president just contradicts himself. So I think that probably this is, I'm not worried about anything the White House is saying at this point.
Yeah, I wonder if it's framing it for a win, which we know the U.S. president likes everything to be in terms of wins and losses.
Wins and losses, and also deference. He wants to create a sense that people are going to tiptoe around him. And he was issuing these sorts of warnings to the Prime Minister around, Canada should be grateful. Canada's not grateful. Think about that the next time you deliver one of your speeches, kind of thing. And so I wonder if they're trying to give out this narrative that the Prime Minister has somehow reconsidered what he thought, what he said, and that he's coming back to sort of seek the forgiveness of the president. And I don't believe any of that for a moment. Not at all. I think this was extremely deliberate, the remarks that the Prime Minister gave in Davos a week ago. And so I would just take this as posturing and narrative spinning from the White House at this point.
Okay, one more question sort of in this vein. Trade lead Dominic LeBlanc said yesterday, you sort of alluded to there's talks about talks, that there's talks about CUSMA negotiations. Where do you think those stand? Because it's been murky for a while.
Right. I mean, it's time for a CUSMA review. And we have heard lots from the United States side about, maybe they're not interested in doing this at all. And the president has said that CUSMA is irrelevant to him. But at the same time, officials from both sides have been working on what a renewed deal could look like. And before the holiday, when the president, when there were people in Congress talking about, from the stakeholder side of it, what does this free trade agreement mean to them? Many of them said, look, we don't necessarily want to keep it exactly the way it is. There are some changes that could be made. And I think there's a lot of interest, for example, and this is going to be very controversial, in a greater American presence in the dairy market in Canada, for example, which is going to be a tricky one to navigate.
Supply management, yeah.
Exactly. But at the same time, there seems to be an appetite on the American side to continue with this arrangement in some form. And so the president would have heard that. And so, is he going to be so brazen as to sort of throw it aside and say he's not going to go along with this? But the negotiations are going to be very tricky. And I think against the backdrop of perhaps a deeper relationship between Canada and China, I think this is largely about that as well. In some ways, when the president is talking about Canada, he's calling Prime Minister Carney governor. This is to suggest that actually Canada is not a real country. And what they're really interested in is the presence of China and Chinese goods in Canada as a kind of, as he says, as a drop-off point. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack.
I want to get your thoughts on this. Yesterday, we saw the Prime Minister unveil his GST rebate in a grocery store. Boy, it looked a lot like a campaign stop. And there's even been a bit of rumblings about, could there be a snap election? How do you read the tea leaves?
Well, I think in ordinary time, if we see a prime minister make an announcement like that, that seems to be geared toward a kind of a crowd pleaser, a direct deposit into people's accounts, depending on whether you qualify for this or not. Like that sort of announcement tends to tee up an election. There's no question. But I think in this case, the prime minister would be aware of the fact that people's chief concern right now is uncertainty in whatever form it's coming to them. And so putting people in the position of having to choose another government in the middle of that, I'm not sure that a prime minister, any prime minister, would want to test the public to see whether they will return the kind of result he wants. He has a minority, but he's got a very large one. And there's going to be a couple of by-elections to come up. And there's still rumblings here in Ottawa about whether more people will cross the floor from the Conservative bench to the Liberal one. And so I'm not convinced that he would see an election as a worthwhile risk at this point. And I think there's a real risk that the public would backlash over that.
Okay, well, that's a lot to consider. Laurie Turnbull, Dalhousie Faculty of Management, we always appreciate your time and your input. Thank you.
Thank you, too. Thanks for having me.
We'll take a break. We'll be back with much more after this.